Whenever we'd go visit Oma and Opa, Grandma and Grandpa in Helmond, I'd look forward to eating Oma's groentesoep, a rich broth with vegetables, sometimes vermicelli, and tiny little meatballs. My mom would make Oma's recipe back home in Utrecht, but it just wouldn't taste the same. It wasn't until my parents moved back to Helmond from Utrecht that Mom's soup started to taste like Oma's. My mom is convinced it's the water in Helmond that makes the soup taste so good. Hi, I'm Toine and welcome to my kitchen. If you're new to this channel, I focus on cooking foods from my home country, the Netherlands, and some of its former colonies such as Indonesia. It's the heart of winter and we've been having really cold temperatures and lots of snow. So when I come in from shoveling the driveway, I really crave a bowl of hot soup. I could make snert, which I've posted a video on before and I'll put the link in the description below, but today I am making my grandma's groentesoep. Groentesoep, which means vegetable soup, has a lot of vegetables in it, of course, but in our family is actually made with a beef broth and, like I said before, has tiny little meatballs in it. To make groentesoep, you will need 225 grams of leek, 100 grams of cauliflower florets, 150 grams of carrots, 125 grams of celery, 75 grams of vermicelli, 150 grams of celery root, 50 grams of bouillon paste. I use Better Than Bouillon roasted beef base, 2 bay leaves, 1 kilogram of brisket, 450 grams of ground beef, salt and pepper to taste, and 2 liters of water. The first thing I'm going to do is check the brisket to see if there's any excess fat on there. There's just a little bit here, so I'm going to just trim that off. Sometimes you'll get a piece of brisket that has hardly any fat on it, which is good. You don't have to do this. Or you'll get it that has a big cap of fat on the end, and that will take a little bit more effort to trim it off. This is not that much. Now, my grandma and my mother always put brisket and boiled it in the water, even though the brisket doesn't end up in the soup. My mom typically will make ragout with it, but you can also use it to make bitterballen or, I almost said stroopwafels, to make bitterballen or croquetten with it. Today, however, once the brisket is cooked, I'm going to take it out of the broth and use it to make enchiladas. Now that I have the fat trimmed off, I'm going to put this in my Instant Pot. I'm going to clean my knife and then I'm going to peel and cut the celery root into little pieces. This is celery root. If you've never seen it before, it's kind of like a knob that sits in the ground. So the bottom, I trim that off and throw it away. And when I peel it, I just try to take the dry outside off and keep the nice white flesh. When you're cutting this, you can really smell the smell of celery. And what's nice is that not only does it have the fragrance of celery, a little bit of the flavor, but there is a little bit of sweetness to this as well, and it really imparts a great flavor to the soup. Cut the top off, and now I'm going to cut it into slices that I'm then going to dice up. The slices are about 1/2 centimeter, 5 millimeters in thickness. The way I'm cutting it is to cut it into little cubes. So first I cut it into these strips and then I go across to make little cubes. And these go in the Instant Pot on top of and to the sides of the brisket. When my mom or my grandma made this, or still makes it, my mom, she doesn't use an Instant Pot. She instead starts this early in the morning and then cooks the brisket for several hours until it is fall apart tender. I don't typically have time for that, so the Instant Pot speeds that up from several hours to just a little over an hour. If you don't have an Instant Pot, just put this on the stove over medium-low heat and let it simmer until the brisket is completely tender. If you want to, you can cut this into bigger chunks. My grandma and my mom always made it into little cubes like this, so that's what I do. I'm going to add my 2 bay leaves, and now I'm going to add 2 liters of water. one. I looked at the grocery store for water from Helmond, but I couldn't find it, so this will have to do. Everything that needs to be in the Instant Pot is in here right now, so I'm going to put the lid on it and start cooking it. Make sure that the vent is set to sealing, so I'm going to have to turn the pot so I can see what I'm doing. We're going to set it for pressure cook on high for 1 hour and 15 minutes. I don't know if you can read that. It was already set up because last time I used the Instant Pot I made soup. So now we're going to leave this alone and let it cook. When you buy leeks at the grocery store, they tend to be pretty dirty, both on the outside sometimes as well as on the inside. So how I clean it is by first cutting off the root end. And the dark green end. Now I'm going to cut it lengthwise. And you can see, just like an onion, it is all kind of layers, and dirt can get in between those different layers. So now I'm going to cut this into about 1/2 centimeter thick rings, or half rings. So I'm cutting this, and then we're going to wash it. It will be a lot easier this way than if you try to do it whole. Love the smell of prei leeks. Okay, I have a couple of thick dark green layers still here. I'm going to discard those. They become kind of chewy in the soup, but the rest is good. I'm going to put these in a bowl. You want to make sure that your bowl is big enough to leave enough space to kind of move the leek around so that you can make sure that every ring is completely clean. Onions. Leeks are of course a member of the onion family with a much milder flavor. So now I'm going to top this bowl of leeks with water, cold water. I'm going to kind of become my own human laundry machine by agitating all of the leeks and pulling them up, giving any sand that is in between there a chance to fall to the bottom. Let me grab a different bowl to transfer the leeks to. Just shake it out a little bit. If you want to use it for a salad, this is when you would put it in a salad spinner to make sure it's completely dry. But this is going to go in a soup, so it can stay a little bit damp. You can also use a little sieve or skimmer to get all the pieces of leek out of the water, but I typically just use my hands. While this leek didn't have a lot of sand in it and it was cleaned pretty easily, you want to make sure that you thoroughly clean any leek because many times there is a lot of sand and maybe even some bugs in between the layers. I've washed and dried my celery. So now I'm going to cut it into 1/2 centimeter thick rings or half moons as well, just like I did with the leeks. I almost said prei again. We add these to the bowl of leeks. And now it's time to cut the carrots. I like to cut the carrots into discs, again about the same thickness as the leeks and the celery. I'm using baby carrots, which are pre-washed, so I don't have to do a lot. My grandma, however, would use a carrot like this, one of those things that in Dutch we call een peen, a really large carrot, and she would peel and cut that for the soup. I'm too lazy for that, so just gonna use the baby carrots. So the vegetables I'm using are what my mom and my grandma used, and actually in a Dutch grocery store, you can buy a soepgroentepakket, which is a pre-made bag with celery, leek, cauliflower, and carrots cut into small pieces. That's not something you typically can find here, so I always just make them myself. For the cauliflower, I like to cut off a little bit of the stem, and then I cut it into 4 pieces, and then cut each piece in half. If you want to break it up smaller, you can just kind of use your hands to do that. I bought these in a package at the grocery store, so they were already washed. Otherwise, of course, you'd have to wash your cauliflower as well. Almost done with the cauliflower. All right, let me clean up and make some space here so we can start making the meatballs. If you're enjoying this video, please click the like and subscribe button. It will really help our channel. And if you want YouTube to notify you whenever we post a new video, click the bell. I have washed my hands, and now I'm going to season the ground beef with a couple of cracks of fresh pepper and some salt. You don't want to put too much salt in here because the bouillon base has salt added to it, so you don't want the meatballs to add too much salinity to the broth. I'm now going to mix that all through. And I remember as a kid helping my grandma with this. I thought it was so much fun to just knead the ground beef together with the salt and pepper and then turning it into little balls. I always would want to make them larger than my grandma would. She would tell me, nope, break it in half. You need to make it smaller. So they need to be about a marble size. So something like this. They don't have to be exactly the same size. If you would want them to be, I would use a scoop or a way to weigh each little ball, but about that size. So this is something that you can have your family help you with and make the act of making soup a family activity. The Instant Pot is at pressure and I can hear it clicking, which probably means it's counting down right now. So the nice thing about this is that you can do all the prep while the Instant Pot is doing its thing. And maybe you finish right when the Instant Pot is ready. In the Netherlands, you can also buy soup balletjes, pre-rolled beef meatballs, already all the same size. But it's kind of fun to do it yourself, so that's what I do. I don't think my mom ever bought pre-made balletjes. We always rolled them by hand. Oh, this one's too big. When my family visited over the holidays, we actually made soup together. My sister was in charge of cutting the vegetables. She did an okay job. And my mom made the meatballs. Of course, she did fantastic. And my dad and I were making oliebollen outside in the cold. So this is the last little meatball I'm rolling, and the Instant Pot has just around an hour left. So I'll be covering this plate with some plastic wrap and putting it in the fridge, and I'll be back when the Instant Pot is ready. The Instant Pot is done. Now we're going to wait 10 minutes. It's been 10 minutes since the Instant Pot is ready, and I'm going to move the vent position to venting. Be careful, hot steam is going to come out. Takes a long time. There's 2 liters of water in there, right? And we only let it sit for 10 minutes. The kitchen now smells like beef broth. We're going to wait for this little pin to drop down, and that's when we know when all the pressure has been released. And then that's when we'll take the lid off. Okay. Now I'm going to take out the brisket. I'm going to leave in the bay leaves, but I'm going to take out the brisket. Put it on a plate, and tonight I'm going to turn that into enchiladas. Going to add my meatballs. So my mom typically waits making the meatballs until she's taken the brisket out, and then she just throws them in the water, in the broth, as she is rolling them. Okay. Now I'm going to add the bouillon paste. This just adds some extra beefy flavor and some richness to the broth. I do have a recipe for making your own beef stock, which I will link in the description below. That includes roasting bones and vegetables and then cooking it for quite some time. So now I'm going to turn this around a little bit so I can see what I'm doing. We are going to turn on the saute mode, and we're going to bring this to a boil. And we're going to let this cook for 10 minutes before we add the vegetables. I'm going to put the lid in the sink because we don't need it anymore for finishing the soup. Smells so good. You can definitely tell that celery root in there. Yeah, it smells really good. I can't wait. It's been 10 minutes and the meatballs have been boiling. I'm now going to turn the saute mode to, I think it's called normal. Yep. Which is medium. And I'm going to add the vegetables. Don't just dump them in because it will splash quite a bit. I'm going to add just a little bit at a time. And these are going to cook for around 8 minutes. We want them softened, but we don't want them mushy. Get the last little bit of all that vegetable goodness. Give it a stir. We're going to let this cook for 8 minutes and then we'll be back. Now we're ready to add the last thing, and that is the vermicelli. If you're Italian, just look the other way for a minute, because we don't want this to be really long slierten of vermicelli in the soup. So I'm going to break it in about thirds. Stir it through, cook it for another couple of minutes, and then it's done. Now when I make a big batch of this and we're not going to eat it all at once or quickly, I actually won't add the vermicelli to the soup at this point. What I will do is I will divide the soup over several containers that go in the fridge or the freezer. And then when it's time to serve, when I'm reheating it on the stove, I will add a little bit of vermicelli to it. Because if you reheat with the vermicelli in here too many times, it becomes really mushy. You can tell that the vermicelli is already getting really soft. I'm going to go for a little bit longer. And then it's time for my favorite part, tasting the food. The soup has cooked long enough, so I'm going to turn it off. But I am going to taste the broth to make sure it doesn't need any additional seasonings. Not at all, it's perfect. Okay, let's scoop up a bowl, make sure I get a little bit of everything. Got some veggies, have some noodles, adding a little extra broth. Let it cool off a little bit. Nice colors in the soup, the orange, the green, and of course the white of the leeks and the vermicelli. But I'm going to start by just tasting the broth. Eet Smakelijk. You have to slurp, it's the law. The broth is nice, has a beefy flavor, has a nice mouthfeel because of some of the fat that rendered out of the brisket. Adds a little richness to it. Very good. So now I'm going to try to get a bite with everything. As a kid, and even now, I always leave the little meatballs to the end as a little treat, as does my wife. The vegetables still have a little firmness to them, but they are fully cooked. Of course, the celery adds such a nice flavor, the carrots, and the leeks are this kind of subtle onion flavor added to the soup. Really, really good. Okay, I guess I'm breaking my rule. I'm going to try a little meatball right now. Just more beefiness added and quite a firm texture compared to all the vegetables. A really good combination. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please click the like and subscribe button and don't forget to share it with your friends. If you have any questions, please post them in the comments below. The written recipe will be on my website, toineskitchen.com, with both the metric and imperial measurements, and you can find me on social media. If you do make the groentesoep, please take a photo and post it on Instagram with the hashtag ToinesKitchen. I'll share it on my website and in my story. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next one.